Today, we're diving into what I see as the essential contradiction at the heart of Stephen Shore's foundational work. It's this tension between his fast conceptual beginnings and his later, slow, formal masterpieces. Shore was just pivotal in legitimizing color photography as fine art, and our debate really focuses on which body of work was most crucial in that effort. Was it his spontaneous visual diary, American Surfaces, or his rigorous, deliberate documentation in uncommon places? So the question is, was his most crucial contribution rooted in conceptual spontaneity or in technical precision? I maintain that the technical precision of the later work was the necessary factor for its lasting success.
And I'll be arguing that the revolutionary conceptual core was already established by the spontaneousness of that earlier work, that it really established the artistic gaze that made the later pictures even possible.
I think Shore's lasting legacy relies squarely on uncommon places. The shift to the laborious, large-format 8x10 view camera. I mean, that wasn't merely a technical upgrade, it was a profound philosophical commitment. The 8x10, it forces meditation. It requires this contemplative composition and a meticulous setup, which results in incredible detail and, visual authority. This structural rigor proved that color could handle serious subjects with a measured, sort of deadpan approach. That is, a lack of overt emotional framing, which forces the viewer to confront the banality and the beauty of the scene at the same time. This intentional formality is what elevated color photography above its commercial reputation and forced that academic and institutional respect.
I come at it from a different way. While the 8x10 certainly delivered the polish, the revolutionary artistic core was established first in American Surfaces. Using a handheld 35mm camera, Shore was able to mimic the speed and the accidental nature of an amateur tourist. He was applying the sensibility he learned at Warhol's factory. This allowed him to document things that critics had just previously dismissed as unworthy. The view from a motel window, a half-eaten diner plate, the random clutter of American consumer life. That snapshot aesthetic fundamentally defined the periphery of American life as a rich artistic subject, regardless of the camera quality.
I hear you on the conceptual groundwork, but let's talk about where that concept actually gained traction. The 35mm work only established the subject. It was the technical maturity of uncommon places that established the art form. Without the intentional composition and the formal structure that the 8x10 enforces, the documentation of suburban intersections would have remained, merely a sociological record. It was his ability to use structural color harmonies, where the precise arrangement of, say, a yellow curb against a pale blue sky becomes a formal compositional element that allowed the work to be read on the same aesthetic level as the revered black and white tradition.
That's a compelling argument, but doesn't that raise the question of the metric for success here? If Shore's primary goal was to shift public perception of the mundane, wasn't the spontaneous, accessible nature of American Surfaces, which was often initially disseminated as a cheaper, more casual book, wasn't that the greater popular success? And what's more, the earlier work demonstrated a radical intellectual humility. It showed that the photographer could step back and let the subject speak for itself. Whereas the highly performative, slow setup of the 8x10, it risks the suggestion of an artist imposing importance onto an otherwise ordinary scene.
I'm just not convinced by that line of reasoning, because the historical resistance to color photography, to it being seen as vulgar advertising, required more than intellectual humility. It demanded proof of painstaking deliberation, of methodical purity. The historical moment required an undeniable demonstration of a photographer's control. The sheer scale and depth of field that the 8x10 provides, where you can virtually count every shingle on a roof, was essential to break down that resistance. It was that visual meticulousness, that clear commitment to deliberation, that granted the work institutional legitimacy and paved the way for future generations.
I acknowledge the necessity of that technical detail for institutional acceptance. It was the rhetorical tool Shore needed to win over the gatekeepers, sure. But the core lesson Shore taught, that the seemingly insignificant holds profound artistic significance, that was delivered via the spontaneous, immediate documentation of American Surfaces. That radical choice of subject, achieved through a rapid gaze, is what fundamentally altered our visual perception of the vernacular landscape.
While both phases are, of course, undeniably intertwined, I still maintain that the rigorous, formalized approach of uncommon places ultimately provided the necessary validation. It gave the structural framework for color photography to finally be taken seriously on the world stage, cementing his institutional influence.
So we've clarified the tension between Shore's two major aesthetic contributions. We've shown how the debate lies between that revolutionary concept and the methodological purity that was required for its widespread acceptance. It's clear that both spontaneity and technical rigor were essential components in fundamentally altering how we perceive the mundane world. And there is certainly much more to explore in his full body of work.